Welcome to I Drink, Therefore I Am, a think tank media podcast hosted by international spirits educator and whiskey ambassador Martin C. Duffy. Each episode, Marty sits down with distillers, brand builders, and industry insiders to talk about the craft, the culture, and the business behind the spirits world. Pour yourself something appropriate, and let's get into it.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to I Drink, Therefore I Am. I'm Martin Duffy, your host. I'm also the Crystal King of Chicago. And the crystal, I mean crystal glass. So no funny emails, please. And today we're discussing the wonderful world of tasting. And no one better to talk with than Mr. Jerald O'Kennard from the Beverage Testing Institute here in beautiful Chicago, Illinois. And Jerald, you have been at this for nearly 30. Well, actually, let's get into that because the BTI has been around 27 years, yeah, or longer.
I know I'm the face, but no, it was actually started in 1981. So we've been around, depending on how you count years, something like 47 years. 46.
That's crazy. Because you're right. All I know of it is you. I mean,
take it over.
Jerald's always there. He's always there. And then when they're out in the marketplace, who's there from BTI? Right. Oh, it's Jerald. Oh my God. I'm BTI. Mm-hmm. So is the owner buried somewhere and you just took over?
So he is the founder and he is no longer with the company. He got bought out by the original group of investors that he brought in. You know how that goes. Mm-hmm. He's actually now a barbecue expert. His name is Meathead Goldwyn. He's published a New York Times best-selling book on barbecue, and so he has amazing ribs. That's his website. So plug to Craig, formerly Craig, now Meathead Goldwyn. And
did I?
So he was. You might have met him. You might have met him at You were at our 40th anniversary party, so you might have met him there, down at Pops for Champagne.
God bless him.
Right. So he had the idea back in 1981, just to kind of set up, what the company is to do. He was traveling around the world actually as a photographer. He graduated from the Art Institute of Chicago with an MFA, and he was doing photography, and he had a real strong interest in wine. He was based out in New York in Ithaca, and he would go to take pictures of all these chateaus and beautiful places and put them together and do art exhibitions. And then what happened was he started tasting all these wines and got asked to be part of these competitions and evaluations. And then he sort of realized that it was all sort of a joke, that it was really like a dart toss. There was no structure to them, and half of them were blind, half of them weren't. And he, because he was in Ithaca, he was at Cornell University and had many colleagues there. And it has a very strong hospitality program, as you know, and also a food science program. So he worked with Dr. Harry Lawless to kind of take ideas from food science and testing and apply it to the idea of running a competition. And so that's really the origin of our company, is to try to do something that's inherently subjective and as objective as possible way with a rock solid methodology, so that it can be repeated and you can make decisions off of it. And it's something more than just a bunch of guys getting together and drinking and talking about booze.
Well, and his process changed now over all those years.
It's evolved. Yeah, no, it's definitely evolved. And the methodology is always being refined as you learn things in the process. I put everything from paper that was, into a computer system that I wrote the program for. And just, you're constantly evolving and you're learning things as you go. It's never a fixed thing. You just try to do something that has a foundation in, hopefully science first, and then also aesthetics, because we're talking to consumers. We want them to understand, on our consumer website where we publish our reviews is tastings.com. And we want them to kind of understand not just the score, but what the thing tastes like and, how to use it and the quality, and be able to get some context to the products as well.
Well, and so explain the whole process. You have brands, you're constantly seeking out brands, and brands are seeking you out. Mm-hmm. And they come in, they have to pay for the privilege. Yes. Mm-hmm. There's a fee.
Right. They're paying for the service. Yeah.
And that's service, not privilege, service. And then once the judging, and for all transparency, I've been a judge many times at BTI.
Yeah, we miss you, by the way. You got to come back.
I'm getting a little old. My liver is getting a little older.
Okay.
And I just find I'm not, I don't have I shouldn't be saying this in public, but I'm getting a little, I don't know. I think my palate is getting a little tired. And two, it seems to affect me more, maybe because I just don't drink as often.
Yeah.
I travel. I just came back from ACSA in Sacramento. And man, you go out and, recoup time ain't what it used to be when I was a young man. I mean, I used to be really good. I used to be boom, come home at 6 a.m. But I was good to go. But man, let's go back up. And I said, what you? And so I don't know. I've seen it and I thought about it. And I just thought, if I go, especially in a lot of the judgments are about 11 a.m. to 1 or 2.
Yeah, 11. Right.
I'm not much good the rest of the. Not that I'm drunk or anything. I just feel tired and a little dull-headed. So.
Yeah. No, I dealt with that myself. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. You just need to get a bunch of college kids, guys who,
with their Borgs, right? I was at the St. Patrick's Day
or like with a little BPI, beer bong kind of thing.
Oh my God! Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, just flush it all down the toilet with that. Yeah, years of work gone away in one Borg session.
So. All right, so then you score a spirit. Now what happens? You let them know what the score is. So just feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. So people trust us with their brands because they think that we're going to be fair, a level playing field, and they're like you said, they're paying us for the service of rating and reviewing and publishing their review. So what happens is every month there's a different category of wine, beer, spirit that we call for. So we have an extensive database of suppliers and importers around the world, and we tell them, hey, we're tasting Chardonnay this month, or we're tasting bourbon, or whatever it is. And the idea is that instead of trying to, because we run these wine, beer, and spirits competitions year round. So they're the oldest ones in the United States. The oldest international wine, beer, and spirits competitions are the ones that we run. And the difference is, well, there's several, but the primary difference is the amount of products that we have people taste. So you and I have both been on competitions in various places throughout the world, and that you taste a lot of spirits or wines, what have you, in a session. Too many to be really, I think, effective discriminating the differences of products and rating them. So what we do is we say, instead of trying to take, the 3,000-4,000 products that we review a year and cram it into a weekend, get a lot of people together and make them taste a lot of things, probably too much per person than they can possibly really taste effectively, we spread it out through the year. So the idea is that, a different category each month. In the category, there's many sessions, and the sessions are small. You've been on them at 15, 16 spirits in a panel, as opposed to 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 in a panel. And we know that there's palate fatigue, and we've tested this over the years. We found these limits based off of years worth of data and analysis that people can't really discriminate differences effectively. Even when you're spitting, which we do, we spit everything, but still, like you were saying, there's that osmosis effect that does numb and dull the palate and even the senses. So, and the mind to some extent. So yes, so that's the core of it is that's the competition part of the business. So that's been running since 1981, doing these competitions broken up by category every month, reaching out to the 60, 70 judges that we have in the Chicagoland area to invite them to taste these things as they come in, and tasting them with a methodology that's, very structured and repeatable and so forth, so that we try to have consistent results for our clients. And that's really why they come back to us, especially the spirits guys. I mean, they tell us that, it's something that they know that they can count on the number being representative a little bit, of their product. And they some people have even used it as quality control to make sure that they're still at that high level that they're trying to attain or have attained. So yeah, that's the competition part of the business that sort of keeps the lights on. And then the other part of the business is the consulting part that I started when I came here, when I realized, wow, we have all of these talented people working for us, these experts. We have all of this data. We have this incredible archive of 8,000 plus products. Let's leverage that to, solve people's problems as they're trying to develop liquid or brands or test marketing claims. So we do a lot of that kind of work as well, very quietly, probably very poorly marketed, and we're working on that. But we've been doing that since I started here in the 2000, really, when we started our first consult, which is basically taking the same tools of a panel and saying, okay, now let's pick the best recipe amongst these 10 recipes, and let's go back and forth with the producer to refine the recipe and give them feedback at each iteration. So that's one part. Or let's take a look at, we're famously known for the Grey Goose ad that was, prevalent in the early 2000s when Sidney Frank started the brand and started marketing. He put our results, which was his Grey Goose vodka on top with 96 points, and then all the other brands below it. So I took that idea and said, well, let's just do a comparative tastings of products for people if they want to understand kind of how they taste in relationship to their competitors. And, if the chips fall their way, then yeah, they have some ammo to use for their marketing claims. So we've worked with all sorts of brands, beer, wine, spirits brands in that kind of capacity as well.
Well, here's a question, and I might be a little too touchy for you to answer. You were recorded. But for when a customer, a brand, if they submit the product and review ain't so good, how do you deal with that? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know I've helped a lot of brands who just think their stuff is plum, but mainly because they haven't really compared it to anything else. And so they think, oh my God, this is my baby. And it is like telling, a young mother, oh, that is one ugly baby.
That's right.
And so how do you deal with that?
So yeah, so we've, not a touchy subject at all. We deal with it all the time. And that's the thing. People are paying for an objective review. So we might tell them that their stuff is not that great in it. But what we want to do is we want to give them the feedback as to why we think that, for one, and what they might do to improve it. Because our panels are mostly composed of buyers, trade buyers, retail and on-premise buyers that are the people that, quite literally, these clients of ours that are the brands want to try to sell their products to. And if they get feedback from a panel buyer saying, we're not going to buy your product because of this, this, and this, the smart producer, smart client will take that into consideration, as opposed to just kind of a sour grapes, like they don't know what they're talking about, and I'm great and this and that and the other thing. That's kind of what we found, is there's sort of these two buckets of responses and clients. And that's something that's tough to tell people. We're the messenger of that, but don't shoot the messenger. Take a look at the message. Is sort of the modus operandi, and we have tools to kind of explain it to them and make sure that they understand that it's not our personal opinion. We don't think they suck. It's our professional opinion that there's something holding your product back, for instance, and it's either a fault or it's a production thing. And in point of fact, since we do, in our competitions, everything is published. That's part of the rules of the competition, so that we can have things to recommend, and people can't just cherry pick the reviews that they want published and not. So everything is published if they enter the competitions. But what we do is, for things that are not recommended, that there's serious problems where it's not commercially saleable, we'll publish it, but we'll make it so that like Google can't crawl it and find it and kind of expose it to. It's really just there so that they can see what the panel saw and read the notes from the panels.
I'm interested in your opinion on this, because I just had an award ceremony, and there was a number of bronze winners. And the bronze, to me, it's like you're giving an award for being a C student, right? And having been a judge in a number of competitions where you're awarding brands, that some of them were just brands, because it's always a combined score. Cumulative score is just over, say, you're 71. So now you're a bronze.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, getting an award for just being a C minus student, does that seem wrong? Shouldn't it just really be? So I get double gold because that's basically being on the A honor roll, right? Once again, I'm just using my high school experience because I was really, really smart. I'll even B. But I don't know. What do you think of that? I mean, I obviously I think it's great for a brand to realize that, but I think when you're giving them an award for giving a rating in the 70s, I think they might be getting the false message because you'll go into distilleries and see all these brands medals hanging up.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I would start with the methodology. First of all, I mean, a bronze medal in the Olympics means quite a bit, right? Because it's some of the fastest people in the world. They just didn't happen to beat the number one and the two people. So it really depends on how you're setting up your competition.
That's different because there was only 3 people running.
Yeah,
that's place.
Yeah, but that's
usually
not
Olympics. There's a lot more people competing.
I agree. Yeah, that was my point. But it's it's the methodology of you only have 3 winners versus, let's say you had, a point-based system, which ours is a point-based system, which the points convert to medals, as you were talking about a 71. And I do agree with you. I think a 71 is too low for a medal. As a matter of fact, our system doesn't really assign medals to anything below an 80. We just say it's not recommended. And, that's that. So I agree in that sense. But yeah, if you're looking at a point to medal conversion system, which actually we pioneered, I think it's real important to understand what each of those medals mean and kind of what's holding something back from becoming a silver, that there's an actual feedback mechanism, that there's a reason for it. And kind of, as I was saying before, you want to be able to capture that from the panel so that, everybody's really clear on why this is where it is and it's a fair score.
All right. Now, so you have bevtest.com, but you also have tasting.com. What is
that's right?
Something these two.
So, and I put BevTest is now the new abbreviation of Beverage Testing Institute. We had a younger crew here a few years ago that said that the good old BTI that you and I love actually sounds like some sort of disease that people don't want,
like an intestinal problem.
Yeah, something that's not really trending as far as an acronym. So we decided to go with BevTest, and we actually made a BevTest our trade site. So that's what BevTest is. That's where the trade can find us and learn about our services and what we can do in partnership with them to help them either enter the competition or consult with them. And then tastings.com, which we had started in 1998, about the time my wife Deborah started here, is the consumer buying guide. So that's where all of our reviews wind up at a minimum. They go to other places too, but that's our space where we can announce the winners of all the competitions. We can do blog posts about trends that we're seeing and all sorts of stuff that we put on tastings.com, and it's all free. So it's pretty well trafficked. It's about 1 million people a year use tastings.com to find different products and to research on different products, which people do before they buy now. So that's an important site for us. It's frankly speaking, and a touchy subject is the fact that we have 2 brands, which is a business is kind of it's been tough to try to pick the 2 brands and which one we should hang our hat on. But at the end of the day, we hired a marketing firm to help us decide that Beverage Testing Institute, BevTest, is the right one to put out there for everything, and Tastings is our publication.
Have you guys ever talked to like Guinness here in Chicago or any other large spirit retailer? Because now they always have little shelf talkers. And at one point, hello, this mug right here, Diageo many years ago had this big, huge screen doohickey that was on an end cap that had traveled around different stores, and they would tell you, you'd have me press scotch, and I'd show up, and tell you all about scotch, right? There's a difference between scotch and bourbon, and obviously everything was kind of geared with the Diageo brands, but that's just
Yeah.
it. Wouldn't that be kind of cool if you had there was some kind of doohickey? I've seen a lot of this too. I've seen like little iPads in like the whiskey aisle. You can go in and touch, and I don't know I'm assuming there's some service. That'd be perfect. I mean, you have a database of,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm assuming you put all this stuff over the last 40 odd years, into this database that people just look up, even old wines, and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. And that'd be a little cheddar cheese.
Yeah, so we've done that before. We've licensed our databases to other folks, kiosks and everything. It's just there's just an ebb and flow to that. We license our data, at least a couple times a year for either researchers or different commercialization schemes that have included kiosks and apps and all sorts of things. Back when I started, that was a huge part of the business, licensing. We had about 9 or 10 different licensees. That was a big chunk of change, but that sort of all evaporated when the dot-com bubble burst. And it's been sporadic since then. But it's always a good idea. It's a little too much for us to do on our own. We're too busy generating it and marketing the service to actually put out our own kiosk or something like that. But we're always willing to listen to people. And, we have a lot of data and a lot of insights in terms of flavor trends and how they line up with scores and all sorts of stuff. So we're always available to talk to people about licensing our data, but it's very seldom that we'll have the bandwidth. I mean, we're a very small company. We're 6 people to commercialize something like that.
I would think there's another company out there that does that kind of stuff. They don't have, the information. They don't have what you guys can offer. And so you just kind of.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, hopefully they'll hear this podcast.
Let's talk about you personally. As we were talking off the air, I'm really intrigued by people who have really great palates, how they've been able to train it. I watched a great video many years ago of Charlie McLean, the Scotch writer. And he does it was a little funny video where he was showing how he was going to go train a distillery staff on how to nose whiskey. And he said, I don't get, the ingredients. And so he'd walk around and, for Alistair, he'd go get seaweed. And for Cragmore, he'd get bananas. And I loved that. Obviously, it was very, very basic, very simple stuff. But now, how do you do it?
Yeah. So going back to the beginning. So I got into this, as all great things, pretty much by accident. I went to the University of Chicago as a physicist and came out an economics person. And,
you're a physicist?
Yeah. I went as a physics scholar. No, I studied it. I never became one. I didn't want to become a scientist at that point in my life. I was too interested in the arts, actually. And so when I graduated, I went to an acting academy here in Chicago that no longer exists to study directing. I wanted to direct movies and maybe act a little bit in them. So I did that for 3 years. And in order to sustain myself, I turned into a catering person, and I was a bartender and I was a caterer. And I was actually way better at that than acting or directing plays. Much more successful. So I was in the food business and the hospitality business, and I learned about wine on the job in terms of what people like, and I learned about spirits very practically from the ground up in the 90s. And then one of our colleagues was actually a real sommelier. He came to work here in the mid 90s, and kept in touch and would occasionally pop by and taste things here at the Institute. And and then when we had our child, Deb and I, we were like, well, we can't work 80 hours a week, nights and weekends, and have a kid. So we need some day jobs. So we sorted that out. And my friend who was working here called up and said, hey, we got some investors. They want to start some books and a magazine, and they want to create a website, tastings.com. But we need someone to kind of run the office and, make the coffee for the judges and book them. And so, do you know anybody? And I was managing the Arts Club of Chicago, their fine dining program at the time. And I said, I got just the person for you, and you know her, you love her, and Deb started basically right after her maternity leave. I managed a couple things and came the next year, 99. And I've been here ever since. And so that, just to answer more succinctly, a lot of on-the-job training. I started out unpacking boxes and kind of just learning what a label meant, a wine label meant, and what the differences between the spirits were. But it was really nice because the person who was running the tastings at the time let me taste through the archive and the samples. And if something was a bad sample, I could taste what that tasted like. So it was a really accelerated learning curve for me. And I was really into it. Being a foodie and a bartender, it just sort of all came together very quickly for me. And just doing it every day, and then eventually sitting on panels, and then moderating panels. I moderated the panels for 14 years straight, every day, pretty much. And it's a muscle. You exercise the muscle, you hear people, you hear their descriptors. And I think that was one of the things we talked about when you first came in. It's just like, wow, everyone talks about this stuff in such depth, and there's different things that people are getting, and you just soak it up. And that's the training, by doing it. And, to your point, I did do some of those kind of more didactic things of, going to the spice shop and going to the grocery store and picking out all the fruits, because I like the exotic ideas and notes and things like that, and like, what really is alum? What does that taste like?
That one, my mom was a nurse, so we always had alum around the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was doing the judging, one of the things that helped me a lot, you guys have a little hour, with various tasting notes under, say, floral and herbal,
chemical. Alum's at the top of that.
To me, it's always been, it's true. So I'll hear something. So like when I was in Scotland, they'd always talk about marzipan. What the hell is marzipan? I don't remember growing up with. I might have had it, but it might have been called something else here in Chicago, as opposed to, the Scots are a little fancy with their awesome marzipan. Oh, we with the cookie. In Hungary, they have a marzipan museum, by the way, where you can see a life-size statue of Michael Jackson made out of marzipan. So that's
okay.
like how fancy can that be? So then that's amazing, though.
Well, that's part of the training process. Yeah. People train themselves here. I call it a gymnasium. So they're exposed to all of these. I know. I tried to trademark it, but it's like, no, it's too silly. But yeah, that's the idea, is that you're constantly challenging yourself. You have that curiosity about marzipan or maybe treacle or whatever these things are, and you go out and you try them yourself, and you sort of connect the dots. And it's a very professional kind of collegial atmosphere in that sense. And it's people trying to help each other understand, everything really, as much as you can for the time that you're here, for the 2.5 hour session that you're here. I think people are really training themselves, and we've seen a lot of success stories, and people have studied, for their masters of wine, master sommeliers, and all sorts of certifications. People come here because it's a good training ground, because you don't do it a lot in the trade. If you're a buyer, you're always constantly juggling the label, the brand, the price point, and you're not really looking at the market from a truly objective point of blind tasting. And so we provide that platform for the trade that's based here in Chicago to really kind of look at the products a little bit more intensely, and maybe make some of their buying decisions. If they see something that they like, we always send them their tasting notes for the panel, for the flights that they tasted, and their scores. And then we connect them with the person that submitted it, if they want to develop their own commercial relationship. It's kind of in the summary report that we give them.
Well, there's something for you. I mean, do you guys ever offer training to the trade? We've lost a few over the last couple of years of COVID, but we used to have good number of whiskey products. And it seemed like they were growing and growing. Same thing with wine. Unfortunately, the wine industry is having a rough time of it. But I think all the more reason why a restaurant or a bar that supposedly takes pride in its spirits or wines should have a staff that really knows it's Stilio. And I remember in the trade, you go to some place, yeah, I worked a number of restaurants where you had guys who were as good at any Italian I ever met. They're just fantastic. That's a passion for it. I don't see that as much, but then again, maybe it's not out in the trade as much as I used to be. But still, you don't hear about it. You don't see it. Is that something you guys would offer? Do you ever go off?
We do. So it's actually part of our recruiting process. So we do reach out to accounts, and especially ones that have finer products, and the people there need help in terms of understanding that, and we invite them to taste on our panels, and it depends on if they understand the value of that, and they come join us and they audit our panels, and if they they interact and they learn our methodology and our technology and how we do things, and many of them stay on and become panelists if that's kind of what they want to do.
But do you go into would you go to an account? I don't know what the structure for lettuce and menu is anymore, but one of these groups that have a large number of venues, and they can maybe select a few key servers and bartenders, and if they do have someone who is kind of their wine or spirit expert, and you do an actual class for them.
Yeah, we've talked about doing that. Again, it's a question of bandwidth, and we're quite busy with what we do here. Always willing to partner with a restaurant group in that kind of capacity and have their people come through. We've batted those kind of ideas around for the last decade or so. It's just having the person power to actually execute a program like that. Mm-hmm. We're very small. It would be a great thing, and I still have hope that we could somehow develop those kind of alliances with at least the Chicago restaurant groups, because I do think we provide a really good training platform for them just in the course of our normal work. And if we were to go beyond that and to do other trainings, we would definitely have to bring in some of our our moderators and some of our editors that we work with to help us execute a program like that. But I think it's a very good idea too. It's just a kind of question of priorities and bandwidth, really, at the end of the day for us.
Yeah. I was with a group of distillers last week, and I thought that one of the key things they're talking about the industry, the state of the industry now. And I thought, looking back when I started in all this back in the 90s, one of the key things that I thought really raised the industry up was education, and I see a lack of that. A lot of I was that first group of whiskey brand ambassadors to come through, and he had huge results, especially for a brand like Johnny Walker. But I don't know. I just see less and less, or at least I hear less and less. I'm not privy to a lot of that stuff. I don't hear about it. You don't see big consumer events like these. So I just think education would be a real key to get people back involved, get consumers, and also even the trade to get consumers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you're right about that trend of brands investing less. I know, we had a difficult year last year in terms of our business because a lot of our clients were struggling with, limited marketing budgets and paying tariffs instead of being able to market and all sorts of things. And so, yeah, those pressures on the budget are huge. And one of the first things to get cut, it's kind of like arts in school, right? It's the arts that get cut.
Right.
And in the spirits world, the wine world, it's education, which is really unfortunate because that's how you onboard people. That's how you get people to really understand and appreciate the things that they're either selling or help people discover things that they might want to buy. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate, but I agree with you.
So now one of the ways I've often see you out and about, especially at events. And I'm assuming you are networking, you're connecting, you're trying to meet brands, trying to see drive in some business. And how far afield I used to see you guys have a table at like an ADI or ACSA. But I'm assuming the cost of that was, I mean, because you have to travel, and then you got to get a booth and all that. And as you say, there's only a full handful of you. So that takes a lot of time and effort and money. So how are you doing it now? How are you reaching out to brands? What is the best way for you?
So we did have to scale back that. We did invest a sizable amount a few years back to go to a lot of trade shows, and unfortunately there was not a really good return of investment, and so those got cut. And so we do a very limited number. We do obviously the trade shows that come to Chicago. We participate as we can. But in terms of marketing, our marketing outreach is really relationship based off of years of working with different brands and folks. So we still have people that people bounce around a lot. They remember us from a previous brand that they worked at, and they reach out to us. But we're constantly email marketing to the whole industry. Like I said, we have a huge database of suppliers and importers, and we're sending out messages on a very regular basis every month to let people know kind of what's going on with us and what the opportunities are. So email marketing is primarily the biggest chunk of our marketing, 90%. And then everything else will wrap up to a trade show or personal relationships that we've developed over the years that we just, constantly are fostering.
Hey, how do you see the downturn and the perceived downturn? Because it's interesting. It really depends on what portion of the industry you're looking at. But how is that affecting your business right now? Or do you feel that people still going, hey, so gotta get that stuff, gotta get some kind of marketing tool, and a really good review is always helpful.
Yeah. No, we feel it very acutely. As a matter of fact, I've often thought of our business as a barometer of kind of the industry, because you sort of see what brands are really actively marketing and looking for those kind of accolades, and which people are kind of sitting back and maybe trying other techniques, whether it's celebrity endorsements, which is sort of a big thing now, or influencers, which was a little bit ago, or bloggers, all that kind of stuff. So I've seen a lot of different iterations of marketing budget priorities. But and as I said, it was a very tough year for us last year. Sales were quite far down, but that's the competition part of the business. On the other side, the consulting part was doing well, and we saw renewed energy in people coming to market and looking to get some help with that, either developmental wise or testing out their products for claims, all sorts of different things. We saw that we were grateful that we had that sort of diversity of service offerings, because the competition part of the business was tough last year. And one thing that happened from COVID was that we sort of expanded to running competitions for other people, in particular states and AVAs, where they couldn't bring their people together safely at that time to maintain their competition that they were running. So we started running these wine competitions for states, and actually we're very busy right now running New York and Michigan currently. We're looking to pick up a couple more states this year, and maybe even a country or two, because we think it's a really good relationship where we're able to do the heavy lifting and the kind of the messy work of tasting everything and organizing the data and presenting the winners. And then they can focus on marketing that and doing the award show and really showcasing, their regional clients and so forth. So that's been a nice chunk of our business on the competition side. And I'm looking to grow that. And so I think it's a bad time for the industry, which is pretty obvious, but there's lots of success stories. I was just at a distillery that does a lot of contract work that, I was like really hesitant to ask how things going, saying, oh, I'm up about 25%, and it's like, great, fantastic, but he's doing a lot of diverse things, including, THC drinks and RTDs and I think also these hop waters and these things like that are these alternative sort of adult beverages now. And I think you really have to do that.
And I gotta get into tasting cannabis. Just in general?
Yes.
This is
Well, not cannabis, hemp.
just hemp.
So
Not the cannabis?
yeah. Well, so the distinction is it's all THC. It's all THC. It's just where it comes from and how legally can you ship it across state lines. So we looked at that. Our former owner that we bought out, Deb and I bought into the company about 10 years ago. He was really keen on using our methodology to do cannabis, but the problem is that it's only sold at dispensaries. So it wasn't until the hemp-based THC, which you see all over the place now because of that loophole in the Farm Bill, that you have enough beverage brands where it's significant. And so we've been doing that this will be our third year of evaluating these hemp beverages. And so it's a growing category. Maybe it's going to stop completely in November. It's sort of the sword of Damocles holding over the industry, but we do see a lot of people still investing in it, and we'll see what happens as far as the regulation. My thought is that they're going to punt and kick it down, the ban down for another year or two so people can get their act together. And eventually I think it'll go through the 3-tier system as it sort of de facto is right now, and they'll just formalize that, but they need a little more time to do it effectively.
I think it'd be interesting for depending on, say, CBD gummies, like 3 hours in, and just see how everybody's holding up. You've been tasting some THC stuff, some CBD gummies, and everyone's just like sitting back eating Cheetos.
No, that's maybe that could, you could start that group. No, actually we spit. So what's really interesting, Marty, I think you'd get a kick out of this. So I was my own guinea pig because I had been using these things. I was reducing my alcohol content and intake, let's put it that way, during COVID. And I started, as these things were coming out, I'm like, you know what, let me check them out. And I actually really enjoyed it. I was a good alcohol alternative. And I was just, trying to formalize it. Like, can we do panels like we do for spirits and wine with this stuff? And the principle is that you don't ingest it, just like you don't ingest wine and spirits when you're doing a tasting panel, you spit it out. But like, my question was, what is the osmosis equivalent of spirits where it like really affects your senses and your mind? Where's the cutoff? Like, how many can you taste even by doing our very precise spitting and rinsing technology and methods? And it turned out to be almost exactly the same as spirits, and about 15, 16 products. And then you start to feel the kind of osmosis effect. It's a different kind of high than alcohol, but you do feel it. And it does, I think, impede your ability to discriminate. So we limit the panels to 15 products when we do the THC beverages.
So is there anything else? Oh, you know what though? Another thing, and you did mention that you guys were looking into books and stuff like that. I think that would be kind of cool. Have you put out a book on, and I know print is not the hottest thing, but they're still cool to have. I really like having that as a resource. But not only tasting, but also retrospective. All the stuff you guys have tasted over the last 4 decades.
Yeah, that would be a fun project. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to write it. I mean, we have tastings.com, which is not just reviews, but it's basically our books that I serialized into articles where you can learn about all the categories and things. So there is a book out there that's sort of floating around. It's just making an up-to-date one is a big lift certainly for us and for me in particular right now. I think I do have some books in me, probably closer to the end of my career when I'm a little bit more stepped back from the day-to-day. I'd be glad to write those and kind of put a period on that. But right now, yeah, it's more about content licensing. And if we had a publishing agreement with someone, I would take a look at it certainly to leverage our data like that. But right now, yeah, books are out of the question, but I am excited to launch a newsletter. We want to do a trade newsletter where we sort of show distributors and retailers all the interesting things that we're seeing that's not in the market, and maybe foster some commercial connections there. So that's a more immediate priority for this year, and I will get that out the door, and hopefully people will like it.
Yeah, I've asked a couple of times, hey, why don't you write a book? I too have wait till the end of my career because it will be a tell-all.
Yes.
A lot of spice, a lot of angry people, but it has to get out Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
you know,
It'll be scandalous. And so you need to properly eject yourself.
yes. Plus, I'm waiting for the win the lotto so I can go buy a remote cabin somewhere.
Got it.
People
Got
won't
it.
be able to find me after I arrive.
Yes.
Well,
That's right. That's right. Good plan. I like your plan.
I was thinking. In party, your last thoughts on just the industry? Do you think? I mean, everything was in a cycle. You really want to look at the downfall of whiskey originally. It started kind of in the 50s, and then by the 70s, overtaken by vodka. And then it took basically another 20 years really before it started really coming back in any kind of meaningful way. How do you see things happening?
Well, it's interesting because I've got a very young staff right now. They're basically, the Generation Z, my son's cohort, and actually one or two of them are friends of his from high school and college. So I always kind of like they're reading, Mark Brown newsletter, which is great, but it can be a little doom and gloom and a little dark these days if you keep reading it. But I have them read that and I get their take on it. And one of the things that came up was the idea of, and I think it's an opportunity, is the idea of experience, that you have to create the environment, which we had growing up, which was, the bar scene and kind of, underage drinking maybe was involved, unfortunately, in the ramp up to it, but it was, alcohol was around, and whether it was a taboo or whether it was accepted or what have you, there was these experiences that were tied into it that were pretty clearly defined as we were growing up. And when we became of age, they were fun times. And that's kind of what I think needs to happen in terms of recreating experiences and occasions for people to enjoy fine beverages and maybe accept a little bit lower sales, but higher prices, higher priced items, higher quality items versus, getting the most amount of alcohol for your dollar as possible. I think that might be in the rear view mirror as far as growth for the industry, but I do like the idea of trying to create these occasions and experiences to recontextualize, fine beverages. I think that's something that I'm hopeful for. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out and who's going to act on it, because I think a lot of people are just such in shock that, the generation coming up is Gen Z isn't drinking as much, and they're trying to solve that riddle. I mean, I think that's a really important part of it, is this whole experience. I talk to my staff about it, like, when do you drink and when do you not drink? And it's interesting that the answers that I get are not the ones that I would have given at that age.
Yeah. Well, the good side of things is that the price of a lot of spirits, especially whiskey, is going down. You're released to see a lot more affordable whiskeys out there. Bit of a glut of barrels on the market. So you have a lot of these independent bottlers coming out, and fire guys coming in and put their own stuff out. So hopefully that you see a lot more of that. God bless. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
But young Jerald, thank you very much. I'm calling you young because I'm assuming you're actually younger than I am. You're not old.
I am actually young. I'm actually younger than you are. 2 years maybe.
I'm old. I'm so old. I know, but thank you very much, everybody. You've seen, you can go to beverage.com or tastings.com. Look at that one right there.
Thank you.
Please reach out to Jerald and his team, especially if you're not brand. I mean, I can verify I was a judge. It's a wonderful judging process. Very honest, very thorough. But thank you very much, sir. And
You're welcome.
Until then, everybody else, hasta la vista, baby.
Thanks for spending time with us on I Drink, Therefore I Am. You can watch every episode of the podcast inside Hospitality Nexus, a global human-first platform bringing the hospitality ecosystem together in one place. Inside the Nexus, it's a career fair that never closes, connecting industry leaders, educators, students, employers, and partners through real presence. Create your free account and explore the community at www.hospitalitynexus.org. And until next time, sip thoughtfully, drink responsibly, Sláinte.